Hey, for Tuesday, October 20th, 2020, this is the Pro and Con Show, and I am your host, Michael James Ott. And as always, welcome to the show. So, encouraging people to be better citizens, to kind of open your eyes and ears and minds to this idea that these issues that we face are complex, and to focus on the facts, the who, what, where, and when, and avoid a lot of the rhetoric and stuff that's out there. And unfortunately, there's plenty of it. Okay. So today's show is actually called Resolution. And so I've kind of talked about this a little bit for a few minutes during many past programs. This idea that we have been really bad at for the last couple of decades, really bad at looking at an issue that we want resolved and really struggling to do something to resolve it in the final analysis. And I'm convinced the reason is that we aren't taking the time to methodically build the groundwork, build the common understanding, the same sheet of music, the same playing field, whatever analogy you want to say or metaphor. But we're not taking the time to do that. Okay? And so that allows a tremendous amount of misunderstanding even at the beginning of a process. And then we don't take the time. And I personally blame our political system again, the two-party system, and the fact that we have allowed this thing, you and I, the average American, we have allowed this thing to exist. And what does it do? Well, it ends up finding these candidates for our House of Representatives or Senate or President who would be king. And a big part of their personalities is they're boastful. They're ego-filled people, and so they, rather than orchestrate a cooperative, synergistic kind of thing where we had multiple people starting out and working together and step by step bringing something forward. They almost always just introduce some kind of legislation that's some kind of Band-Aid for one of the symptoms of what's really hurting our country or what really needs to be fixed. In other words, when you you want to find the root cause for the problem and address it as opposed to the symptoms. So if you're having a heart attack and someone says, "Oh, you're feeling pain in your arm," you don't want them to rub your arm with some kind of a pain medicine or something like that. You want them to figure out that you're having a heart attack, and then help the person's heart get in a better way as soon as possible, right? Well, this is exactly the problem that we have with the major issues that face us, is we just refuse to take the time to analyze and look for what is the root cause of our issue, and then suggest on a cooperative consensus kind of thing, here's some resolutions, some solutions for it. And so I've mentioned this multiple times in the past, and again, just kind of touched on it and spoken about it for a minute or two. But I thought maybe we should take an entire show and just imagine, just like we did with the Citizen Statesman Amendment, really kind of talk it through in some detail so that there's a better vision in your minds and the minds of other people for maybe how this thing would work. So let's say that we want to, we've had another horrific mass shooting somewhere. okay? Maybe someone smuggles an assault rifle or multiple rifles or multiple guns or whatever into a sporting event. And then, shoots a bunch of people in the stands at an NBA game or an NFL game or something like that. Again, would hope that this would never happen. But let's say that hypothetically it did. And now somebody, because of the incredible density of the people in the stands, this perpetrator, was able to kill 250 people, let's say. And so that would raise the call again for, what are we going to do about this? And in the current state of things, you would have, various politicians either say, well, you can do something, but you can't control guns because everybody has a Second Amendment right, to have as many guns and shoot as many people as they want, sort of. As opposed, and other people would be saying, we need to get rid of the guns and so on. And no one would actually spend the time to say, okay, we need to truly understand this situation. We need to understand, how much the weapons themselves are contributing to this situation, but also how much, what else is contributing to it. Is it our society, our culture, our anything? Our psychology, the financial situations or whatever for these people. What is it that's the basis behind this? And it's not just the guns, and it's not just the people, and so on. It's a complex combination. So how would it work? Okay, in a good scenario, in an improved scenario, where we're working together and understanding that this is a major issue, we would say, okay, let's declare December of 2020 the mass shooting gun control month. And we're going to start at the beginning of December, and we're going to spend at least a week to 9 days or a week to 10 days or whatever. And we're going to get various perspectives on, people who have written, kind of the thought leaders on human psychology involved, and various thought leaders on, criminal activity and the use of these weapons and the availability of the weapons, and how much the various weapons can contribute to some kind of act like this. So we would spend at least a handful of days. And how would we spend it? Well, as a nation, there would be a open public hearing organized by the executive branch or organized by the legislative branch, and just open hearings, okay? And a facilitator that would say, okay, here's an agenda of these different thought leaders, these different people that have these different perspectives on these issues, and we're going to hear from them. And we're going to allow them to speak uninterrupted, without political gamesmanship or anything. We're going to just let them speak. What is your perspective, Professor whatever, from the Department of Psychology at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology or whatever? I don't know, these people. And okay, so tell us what's going on, what you think, why you think it, what kind of data do you have? Let's look at it. Okay, and you'd have, and people from the NRA would come and say, it's not the guns, it's the people, and blah, 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 blah. And just on and on and on, okay? And we get those different perspectives, and every day, these are open hearings, they're available. The individual citizen can watch on televised channels across the nation if they want, and some would. Admittedly, a fairly small percentage, but some would. And then every day, at the end of the session, there's a pause, and the people that have organized that day's events would summarize, put an executive summary together of the key points that were said by the various speakers. And there would be a quick review of that with those speakers, make sure everyone was on board with, yes, this summary accurately represents what I think are the key points from what I said today. And then that would be available. So you'd end up with these summaries. So there's a day-long, every detail kind of thing that anybody can watch, and then there would be this executive summary at the end of every day. And then at the end of the week period or 2-week period, there would be a summary report. That's again would have these executive summaries at the top and all the detail behind. And then based on that basis, we'd say, okay, now we have a uniform understanding of all the perspectives of this and the data from this group and the data from that group. And yes, some of that data is going to be conflicting. So we would talk about, how to resolve those conflicts and stuff like that. But we would also start talking based on the basis of all the information. What is happening that we really don't like, namely the mass shootings kind of happening, and what parts of this are okay or positive. Maybe the sportsmanship of skeet shooting and things like that are actually positive things related to guns and gun violence, if you will. So we talk about those and how do we expand the good things and make them even safer and more enjoyable. And then on the negative side, these bad things, what are some ideas, again, based on this solid block of understanding, what are some ideas that would address and mitigate or eliminate these negative things? So there'd be ideas. And so then there would be like the third week of this month, we would spend talking about some ideas that people had on addressing these issues and list them out side by side, summaries of what those ideas, what those programs would be. And then there's something in engineering called a Pew matrix, where you basically look at some of the different proposals and you put them side by side, and then you evaluate them against criteria to see which ones address best the most criteria that you have for whatever the issue is. And then you can actually look at maybe there's options A, B, and C, and you decide that option B is actually the best one on its own, but then you can look at option A and option C and say, okay, can we integrate some of the things in option A that we like or option C that we like into option B? Are there ways to kind of make it a hybrid so it's even better than what it was originally, the original proposal? And then you'd say, okay, now option B, edited, improved, is the way we want to go forward. So you'd write legislation around, you spend the last week of the month writing legislation around option B, the improved version of it. This is what we intend to do going forward. This is why. Basically, you've got this whole basis of background for the month. And then you would, and I think these major issues, what you would say is, okay, we're going to pass this legislation, we're going to sign it into law, and then we're going to re-examine it 3 years later or 5 years later, okay? Because you don't know that you put something into place, and it's an experiment. You're thinking that it's going to work, but you're not sure. So you don't just, in my view, it would be a mistake, and this is again another mistake that we make. We write a law and we just, okay, it's going to last forever. Well, we shouldn't do that. We should automatically, especially when we're trying to resolve some of these major issues that we've really wrestled with, we should put something in the law and have a sunset clause in it, where after, again, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, we're going to come back and we're going to re-examine this legislation and see how well it's doing as intended. And a brilliant example is back in the, whatever, 80s, I think it was, maybe it was 90s, 80s, 90s. Anyway, we had this push to get the laws, criminal laws, more stringent is the best word. And the so-called 3 strikes and you're out kind of thing. And the intent was, and I think most people had the right intent, the intent was, well, if we increase the punishments, especially for repeat offenders, then that will be something that will deter them from, doing additional crimes. So, okay, the first crime, you get maybe a fairly minor sentence, but you're warned, hey, if you do this again, it's going to be more severe. And if you do it a third time, wow, you're going to go to jail for basically the rest of your life. And so I think a lot of people thought that would work. And I remember back in the day, I was thinking, well, maybe that'll work. Maybe that'll actually deter people from, repeating in criminal activity. Well, over time, and it became apparent after a handful of years, that it was, kind of this mass incarceration thing that we talk about today, that we were taking people and in many instances they were committing the same crime over and over and over again, but it was actually a pretty minor crime, possession of controlled drugs or whatever in small quantities, because they were maybe a user and they kept getting caught. And then that third time that they got caught, they go to jail for 20 years or 30 years because they were smoking marijuana or something on a regular basis. And that's wrong, but that's the way it was. And so we had clearly a problem. And we just, over the last couple of years ago, I think we finally addressed that and finally, I think, got those laws changed, at least some, so that that's not occurring, especially if those crimes are minor crimes that are being repeated. But the whole point being, we need to do a much better job working together and building that basis of understanding. And that's going to be a whole lot easier, by the way, citizen statesmen, when there's a bunch of citizen statesmen in our government as opposed to people who would be king that came from our 2 political parties, who aren't interested in resolving the issues. They're only interested in remaining in power. Okay? And the rest of us, though, we're interested in resolving the issues. Am I right about that? I think I am. That is my opinion. I'm interested in resolving the issues. I want mass shootings to stop. And I want us to come up with a robust plan that will not just be gun control or some kind of gun licensing or whatever. It's going to be an entire program, because that's what it's going to take to stop or significantly reduce mass shootings in this country. So, again, the name of the show is Resolution, and it's talking about taking the time over a period of time, several weeks, to start with the basis of all the different perspectives, work through the good and the bad, then the proposals for how to address things to enhance the good and mitigate the bad, then the final legislation, which is written around the best ideas on those proposals, and then a reevaluation 3 to 5 years later to make sure that whatever we're doing makes sense and is working as good as it could, and we can tweak it then. We could improve that process. Okay, so my name is Michael James Ott, and this has been the Pro and Con Show. And until the next show, bye for now.